All right, good morning, class. I am a little late on posting for what we need by Friday, but it is a shorter assignment. So I'm going to go over a few things that I moved from the week 1 folder to the week 2 folder. So if we go back to our course, okay, the link should be here for our meetings on Fridays. So every Friday morning, you can just click on the black folder and it'll take you to the Google link. The other thing is what we did last week, the flip grid that was due is here. If you want to check out this speed book dating website, that would be great because it will help you decide on some independent reading books that you might want to check out at the library, at the public library, or to ask me about. Now, week 2, we're going to look at a reading strategy called the Notice a Note slideshow. And then your assignment that's due Friday is a 7th grade annotation. So let's dive into the Notice a Note slideshow. When you click on this, okay, it's going to show up as a slideshow. And give me just a second. All right, so some of this is not going to pertain to you, so we're going to skip the first slide, okay? We're going to go to Notice a Note. And Notice a Note is a reading strategy that we're going to be using throughout this year. And when you think of Notice a Note, okay, you're going to notice something, you're going to pause, and you're going to actually write a note off to the side of a story. So the story that we're going to read is called 7th Grade. It's by this man named Gary Soto. He is an American author and poet, but he comes from a Hispanic household. Both of his parents come from Mexico, similar to my husband, and he writes a lot of poetry, novels, and children's books, and he has a lot of multicultural appeal that is universal, meaning it can apply to everyone. So the first time you read it to yourself, I want you to read it once, and you're just going to be thinking to yourself, what do I notice when I'm reading? And what are some things that I question, whether it's words that I don't know, or maybe I don't know why the character is doing what they're doing. Okay, so you're going to read the story once. Then the second time, you're going to complete the assignment, which is the annotation. So an annotate, the word note, annotate, has the word note in it, meaning we're going to be taking notes in the margins of the story. Margins are the left and right side of a story where there's some white space, okay? And you're going to be using this skill, annotation, all the way through college. So what is a signpost? In reading, similar to when we're driving a car, okay, when you're in a car, you will notice a lot of signs on the side of the road, whether it is a blue sign telling you what rest stops or restaurants you can drive by, a deer crossing sign, maybe it is a traffic light, perhaps it is a roundabout sign, right? When we see these things in the passenger seat or the driver's seat, we notice it and then we respond accordingly. So if it's a yield sign, we notice it and we start to slow down. Okay, or a speed limit sign. Hopefully, we're all going the speed limit, right? Same thing with reading. We're going to have signposts, and I'm going to give you the name of 6 of them, okay? And they're kind of like traffic lights. When we see them in our reading, we're going to stop, pause, notice, and note, okay? So the first signpost is called contrast contradiction. All right. And what does that mean? It's when you're reading and the character says or does something that's the complete opposite of what you would expect them to do. And you have to ask yourself a question. Why is the character doing that? Right? That's not like them. A lot of the times you have to know the character in order to understand that that's not something that they would do. An example of this is Hermione from Harry Potter. Let's say if you know Harry Potter, Hermione is a young student who comes to class every day with her work done. Okay, she's kind of like, she likes to please the teacher, she likes to learn. If she were to come to class, like to spells or potions class without any of her homework done, she has her head down. We're like, what is Hermione doing? That's not normal for her, and why is she doing this? Another example is if a friend of yours who usually eats lunch with you goes and sits in the corner, right? And you're like, are you going to join us for lunch or not? Right? Or if you talk to a friend every week and they stop calling, you're wondering, why are they not talking to me anymore? What's going on? Right? That's a contrast contradiction because it's not like the person that you know. All right, we're going to skip that slideshow. The next, so we're on signpost or traffic light number 2, is an aha moment, right? It's like, oh, I get it. Aha. I like the sloth here from Zootopia. He's my favorite. He's a little slower at noticing things, but he has an aha moment. So this is when you're reading a character finally gets something, they understand something, and you have to think, how might this change things? So here's an example. Let's say you want to go to a sleepover at a friend's house. Mom or dad say, nope, you are not allowed to go over to so-and-so's house tonight. And you get really upset and you're like, I don't understand why my parents won't let me. My grades are good. I helped out around the house. Like, why is this a problem? Okay. But then you find out later that, let's say that friend is going through some troubles with her family. Let's say their parents are getting a divorce and you had no clue until later. And you kind of have this aha moment like, oh, that's why mom or dad wouldn't let me go over to their house. Okay, and you realize it's not because mom or dad just didn't want you to have fun. There was a reason behind it. So you have to think, if this happens, if I realize something, how is this going to change things? So in that case, how might it change your friendship with that person? Maybe they need an extra shoulder to lean on. Maybe they just need space from you if they're going through some family troubles, right? So it all depends on the circumstance. Okay. I'm going to skip with this a little bit. There's just some other tools you can think of. We're on signpost number 3. So thinking we're kind of driving a car and we come up to a tough question sign, right? And when I say driving a car, I'm thinking of like we're reading, right? We're scanning with our eyes and we see a tough question. A tough question is exactly what it sounds like. It's when you're reading and the character asks themselves a really tough question. They might say, I wonder how I'm going to survive the school year, right? With a question mark at the end. And you have to ask ourselves, why is the character asking them this? Like, what does this question make me wonder about? The important thing to note is a tough question doesn't always have to end with a question mark, okay? It might say something in a book like, and she thought about how she would handle this, but she wasn't sure, period, right? But that's still a tough question because the character is still thinking, how am I going to handle this situation? A tough question is not an easy question to answer. It's not like, what would I like for dinner? That, although some of us have trouble making decisions, it's not something that can be answered with yes or no or a answer right away. It's probably something that's going to take some time to answer. Okay, and in order to answer a tough question, we kind of have to put ourselves in the character's shoes. We are on number 4, so we're driving down the road, reading our story, and we see an again and again. It's exactly what it sounds like. It is a word, phrase, object that's repeated again and again in a story. So, going off the Harry Potter theme, if the word scar, like Harry Potter has a scar on his forehead, if that word is repeated over and over again in one chapter, I have to think, why does the word scar keep showing up again and again, right? What is the importance of a scar? It must have some sort of importance. And it's going to have a lot of repetition because we might use it to foreshadow what's to come in the rest of the story. Number 5, words of the wiser. Notice we have some older characters down here. I kind of think of grandparent figures when I think of words of the wiser. This is when you're reading a story or novel and a character who's in the novel approaches the main character and gives them life advice. So, for example, Dumbledore in Harry Potter gives Harry Potter a lot of life advice on how to approach some of the tough questions he has. So we have to ask ourselves, what's the life lesson that this older person is trying to teach us, and how is it going to affect the character in my story? Rafiki is a words of the wiser character, right? It doesn't always have to be someone like old. It could just be an older sibling or a parent, but usually it's going to be somebody who's like a grandparent figure. So think for a moment, have you received advice from a teacher, a coach, maybe a small group leader or a principal? And maybe it's something you didn't want to hear, but it helped you in the long run, right? Those are words of the wiser. They help you navigate life. Our last one, number 6. This is a memory moment. I like to think of the movie Inside Out with Joy. If you haven't seen Inside Out, we have these little orb balls, like memory I forget what they call them. I want to say like memory orbs, something like that. You guys probably know. But a memory moment is when you are reading and the author interrupts, they split the story, and they go back in time to a flashback in the character's life. So if you've seen Inside Out, it's a really kind of emotional Pixar movie, but Riley is the main character. She's a girl who has to move to a new town, make new friends, and she's having trouble with it. So Joy keeps all these memories from her brain and goes to all these flashbacks of her childhood. And if we see a moment from a flashback in a story, we have to notice these memories and think to ourselves, why would the author put a memory from the past in the story? It has to be important, and why? We might not know right away. Okay? So you might see some keywords might be like, I remember back when, or thinking back, or when I was little. Okay, those might be some sentence starters in the story to let you know a memory moment is approaching. So these are 6 like traffic lights or signposts when we're reading that we need to notice, and they're just reading strategies, friends, that we use when we are reading. And so we're going to use this in 7th grade. And in the story called 7th Grade by Gary Soto. So now let's flip gears. I'm going to keep the slideshow up for reference. And if you want to take notes in a notebook, just know that this slideshow is available to you. But if you want to write these definitions down in a notebook, be my guest, okay? But let's go back to week 2 now. We're going to go to the actual assignment for this. So it says 7th grade annotations. I'm going to go here and I'm going to click on it, okay? And here we go. The PDF of the story is actually called 7th Grade. It downloads, okay? And I'm going to click on it. And the first time, I just want you to read the story through. Just read it through all by yourself. And I want you to just think, what are some things that I notice? What questions do I have, okay? Then you need to read it a second time. And the second time, you're going to go paragraph by paragraph, and you are going to highlight. You should have the ability on your screen to highlight or underline any of those signposts. So if you see an again and again word, you're going to underline, highlight, however you would like to, and label it AA for again and again. If you notice a contrast contradiction, like a character is doing something that seems strange or not like they should, you are going to put CC next to the thing that you highlighted, okay? And you're going to see how many of those 6 signposts you can notice throughout the entire story. Now, that might seem like a lot to do, so that's why I want you to take it one paragraph at a time. Which of the 6 do you notice in paragraph 1? You might have some paragraphs where there are no signposts, so don't think, oh my gosh, I'm going to panic because I can't find a signpost here. Sometimes not all of them are used in this story. I don't think all the signposts are used in this story. I think maybe 4 of them are used. But you might not even find all of those. So do your best to really dig deep and think, what are the signposts will I see? And you're going to highlight them. But that's why I want you to keep this slideshow up or write these notes down in a notebook so you can have them with you while you complete this assignment. Once you complete the annotations, you are going to go ahead and submit this by Friday, because we're going to talk about it on Friday. The other thing, so this is your first assignment. The second assignment is a pre-test, and that will be due Friday as well. I will make a separate video for that and show you how to get on a pre-test. I want to see what your English skills are so far. So it is a pre-test. It is not graded. I want to see what you know from 6th grade. And I will, again, make a second video for that. So what is due Friday is listening to this video, completing the annotations, okay, reading through the story twice, okay, complete the annotation assignment that I have up on the screen, and then completing this pre-test that I will send you a message about, okay? So 2 assignments due Friday, and if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. And if you need to set up a Google video chat with me because you're not understanding, we can do that. Thanks, guys. Bye.